Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Connect with CounselLink November Webinar Product Year-End Review. My name is Dave, and I will be your host for today's webinar. Before beginning, there are a few housekeeping items to review. First of all, the webinar is being conducted in listen-only mode. Secondly, in order to ask questions during today's webinar, please utilize the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. There will be time at the end of today's presentation to address questions. This webinar should last approximately 45 minutes. Today's session is being recorded, and you'll receive a link to access the recording and the slides in the next few days. Today's presenters are Jared Fergal, Senior Product Manager. Jared leads the CounselLink integration efforts. Also joining Jared will be Doug Sikafus. Doug is a production manager. He's responsible for understanding client needs. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Jared.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Connect with CounselLink webinar. So we wanted to take a minute to just walk you through some of the major features that we've put out throughout the whole 2017 calendar year and give you a little glimpse into some of the stuff that's coming out in the release that's happening over this weekend. And then I'm going to turn it over to Doug, who's going to kind of walk you through some of the features the features and themes of what we're looking at for the 2018 year. So we had a pretty big year. You know, we've launched our legal request feature, and I'm going to go into a little bit of a demo on that in just a little bit, so I won't spend too much time talking about it here. As most of you have probably seen by now, the invoice overview experience has been overhauled to match the look and feel of many of the more up-to-date pages in the application. All of our searches have been updated, both from a front-end UI perspective as well as a back-end search technology to streamline and make it more efficient for you guys to find what you're looking for. We've added the ability to assign law firms to matters by finding them by name as opposed to only finding them by fee structure as we had previously. We've introduced the concept of a priority reporting support line where you can reach out and get more immediate answers on some of your reporting needs. We've streamlined the deactivation of users within the system. We've introduced some new communication efforts as well around for better ways for us to interact with our clients and with our law firms. So we've introduced the ideas board where you can submit any ideas you have for the application to be reviewed by the product team. We're putting in-app notifications as well to give you guided tours of some of the new features, notify you of release notes and bug fixes that get made. Just keeping the communication going on a regular basis. We've updated our invoice overview report. So from within the invoice overview page, there's the report. We've added new configurations to show and hide different sections in that report. We've updated the information that appears in the matter change request report as well. We've introduced the ability to report on fiscal year instead of only calendar year. And in this release that's coming over the weekend, we're going to be exposing the ability for you to have external invoice reviewers. So where you can send out an invoice to somebody that might not even work in your organization for some sign off on an invoice that might, might need their review. You can let them make adjustments or flags on that invoice as well as approve of it. The email manager feature, which is part of which is the ability to customize some of the email templates that we have within CounselLink, and we'll go into that a little bit later as well. And we'll be introducing multiple billing guidelines, the ability to upload and manage more than one billing guideline at a time. So previously, you were only able to have one billing guideline that was applicable to all of your vendors. Now you'll be able to have multiple, and you can set various levels of required and optional and that sort of thing. So lots of good stuff. So look forward to seeing that release come over the weekend. So when you come in on Monday, you'll see a lot of good stuff. So now I want to take you through our legal request feature. So what is the legal request feature? Essentially, it's a way to streamline the communication with your legal department and your internal business partners as well as your law firms. So it's the process of gathering any requests that you might handle now through phone calls, emails, spreadsheets, and funnels all of that work into the CounselLink application, where you can better track and manage the requests and keep tabs on how much work your team is actually doing, all within the system, and we provide reporting capabilities on that. So, for anyone who needs, whose legal departments take a lot of requests from internal business partners like your sales teams and other groups like your product team maybe, we're giving you the ability to let them come into CounselLink as a non-provisioned user through single sign-on, and they can submit a request through a form that you would put together working with our professional services team. And that form would get routed into CounselLink, enter a workflow, and then you can process that request from there. And then we also handle the use case of law firms submitting requests for missing matters. Let's say the law firm did some work for you and maybe they're trying to invoice you, but there's no matter to invoice against. Historically, they've had to get you on the phone, send you an email. Now they can put the request directly into the system, and you can keep track of those requests much more easily. And at the end of all of this workflow, you can make the decision as to whether or not you want this request to become a matter within CounselLink. Some requests you might decide don't need to become matters, but if you do decide that they become matters, you have all that information that you were gathering on the request that you can then send over. So, like I was saying, we take advantage of the existing framework that we've got for our custom fields and the way we set up the layouts for matters and invoices. We applied that same concept over to legal request. And you can match the fields on your legal request to what's on your matter so that there can be a one-to-one correlation. You can have specific fields mapped over and some that you don't necessarily map to the matter. Anything that gets filled out on the legal request, if that request becomes a matter, that information that got entered throughout the whole life cycle of the legal request will now transfer over to the matter so that there won't be a duplicate data entry. So, like I said, you have the option of choosing whether or not you make those requests into matters through whatever process you want to define. So in order to start using this feature, you have to engage the professional services team. There'll be an implementation, and that implementation can range in size. So we have a basic package which gives you less configuration options and a predefined one-step workflow similar to what you saw on the previous slide there. But then we also offer the ability to have a completely custom package where your form and your workflow can be as big or small as you need it to be, tailored to however your organization wants to function. But again, it requires an engagement from the professional services team to get implemented. So you'll have to reach out to your account manager to get the ball rolling on that process. All right, so now I'm going to take us out of this deck here for a minute, and I'm going to take us into CounselLink, where you can see. So let's say you're on your home page here. You've logged in. If you have the legal request feature turned on, you'll see now that legal request is up at the top navigation. There's also a panel for it down at the bottom where you can create a legal request. And just like our other modules of the application, it's got a top level search, which gives you all of the functionality that the other searches give you, all the custom filters and the ability to configure which columns are available, all the sorting, the printing and the exporting of the results over here, and the more robust search capabilities. So, and up here you'll see you have a button to create the legal request. So that will take you to the form that gets created. So this, again, is leveraging the UCDF framework that we've got with our custom field layouts. And users would come to this form when they need legal assistance. They would fill out, based on the fields you have, this form could look completely different. It's all up to you on how you want this to look. But let's say, like in this example, it's pretty basic, but I'll just go through it. Just to get the ball rolling, you can fill out any of the other information as you have it. You have the ability to attach documents to this as well. And you can save a draft of it if you start to fill it out, but you don't have time to complete it. You can come back. But then when you're ready to submit it, you push the submit button. Now you have entered the workflow. So this request has now been routed to the first person assigned to the task. So if you look down at the very bottom of this legal request overview, you see visualization of the workflow, and the blue box is the current step that you are on. So essentially what this means is that based on the type of request that I've selected, it has routed the request to this group of people here. So it's in the contract review step. And so you come back up to the top, you can see that this is the name of the task you're in. It's not assigned to anybody right now, but it's with the contract legal request review group. So you can set up groups within your organization so you can have a whole team of people assigned to a task, and it basically comes in, enters their queue, and any one of those people can come pick that task up. So you have the buttons here. If you get this, let's say you get this request now, someone has filled it out, and now you're the reviewer. So you come over here, you want to assign it to yourself. So now, click on the assign button. The information will update, and so you can see now that it's assigned to me. I can unassign it if I didn't get a chance to finish it and I'm going to be on vacation. I can go put it back in the queue. I can reassign it to somebody else. But let's say I started reviewing this and I needed more information. It wasn't clear to me what I was supposed to do with this. I can send a note back to the requester, whoever. Let's say you just type someone's name and you say, I need more information. You then submit that. I don't have a user specified anymore, but you could submit that. It would reroute this request back to the person who submitted it, and you could ask them to fill out certain fields that they might not have filled out before, or maybe you just have a clarifying question that you want to ask. Then they can respond to you. Similar to this look here, they would have a similar view where they could complete the task, and completing the task would basically pop up a window where they could enter the note, answer your question. They could come and edit the task or edit the request to add that extra information that you wanted. Maybe they forgot to attach their document. They come in here, they edit, they attach their document, save the changes, and then resubmit. So let's say they've done that, they've filled out their extra information. Now the reviewer can decide, do they complete this or do they reject this request? Maybe this does not need to be a matter, and they're like, no, we're not going to take this on. And so now you reject it. You also have the option up here of closing the request. Maybe it's just an old request that was sitting there that you already acted on and you don't need this open anymore. You can close it out. What these buttons really mean is pretty much up to you and how you want to use these requests. Essentially, we treat them as different statuses, but essentially that's all they are, is statuses. And each one of these things, rejecting, closing, assigning, or completing, each one of these will send an email to the appropriate people notifying them of the change. So if you are the requester, you'll get a notification when you submit the request. You'll get notified whenever a request for more information comes back to you, and you'll get notified when if your request gets completed, if your request gets rejected or closed. So you can also, as the reviewer, you also have the option of linking this to an existing matter. So let's say one of your law firms submits this request and says, okay, hey, I'm trying to bill you and I don't see this matter. Can you please create it? Maybe you already had created the matter and they couldn't find it. So you can link this request to that existing matter so that it's already created. You've now associated these two. The law firm will get notified that there was a link, and then they can now submit their invoice appropriately. You can add notes and other things. You can see down here who's participated in it, all the documents that got attached. You can see the history of events that have taken place on this request as well. And then, like I said, if you complete this based on what's in the workflow, based on what the next step of your workflow is, it will progress to the next step. In this case, I didn't fill out required fields. So let me just fill that out now. Again, for the purposes of illustration, I will keep that pretty basic, but now I can complete this. And you'll see that it will create a matter. It'll link to the matter from this request. It'll notify the requester that a matter was created. And now you'll have a direct tie between the matter and the legal request. So if you come down here and check out the history, you can see the matter was created and it has the ID here, and the workflow has completed. So now this request is marked as completed, the matter is created, and you can link over to it from here. So now if you were to, let's say you've been using legal requests for a number of weeks, months, whatever it is, and you want to see how things are going, how many requests have you processed. With the 17.4 release that's coming out this weekend, we're introducing analytics to this as well. So we've got some in-app analytics, so you don't have to go to a separate application or separate pages. It all lives within the legal request space. You can see how many legal requests you've processed by the status. So you've got your in progress, you've got your closed, rejected, completed. You can play around. Maybe you don't care about how many have been completed. You only want to know about the other statuses. You can check, you can cross off whichever statuses you're not interested in seeing, and the chart will update accordingly. You can hover over and click on a section, and it populates a search-like grid down below where you can see all the requests that are related to that piece of the chart that you clicked on. And we've got about 7 or so canned reports in here that you can access. So let's say you want to look at some requests by status by time period. So here's all of the requests that have been processed in the current month, grouped by week. So the number down here is the number week in the calendar year you're on. That's a little confusing, I get. But you could switch it over to, let's say, month, and let's say you want to look at the current quarter, see how you stack up. So you can see you've had about three requests submitted in October, and in November you submitted 9 were submitted. And you can see how many were rejected, closed, and completed. And like I said before, clicking on any of these will populate down below all of those legal requests, and you can click on them and drill down a little bit further to see what's going on. You also have the ability to stack the bar, so if you wanted to just see all the requests in total, also broken out by status in a different view, you can click that bar optionally, or you can click that box and it'll stack them, or you can have them side by side. You can also get a sense of how quickly you're closing these tasks. So let's say that you're doing this. Yeah. So you want to see how quickly am I resolving my requests on average, and we report on this in terms of days. So on average, it's taking me about 40.4 days to close out requests. When I'm rejecting them, I'm much faster. It takes me about 14 days to reject. And then in November, you can see the completed ones in November. I'm completing them pretty quickly sometimes as well. So it's only taking me about 1/3 of a day. So you get a sense of how you're doing. You can also view this by the specific task. So maybe, as you know, that workflow we looked at before, labor and employment, seems to take me a lot longer to get through those types of legal requests than it does for general legal requests or contract reviews. So maybe there's something about that. Maybe there's an outlier, maybe I have a problem in my process. I can click on this, start to see the request, see how long it took me to, process one or versus another. I could also take it a step further. I could look at it by user. So here's all the people who have submitted legal requests, and you can see, okay, so here's how fast everyone's closing them out. Oh man, I'm the fastest. I must be doing the best. So, but yeah, so these are some of the canned reports that you can get, different views, different ways to slice and dice the data so that you can see exactly, how you're doing, both from a numbers perspective as well as how quickly you're addressing the issues that come in. So yeah, so those are some of the features that are available to you once you start getting going with legal requests. And again, as I mentioned before, in order to start using this feature, you'll have to engage our professional services team through your account managers. All right, so now I'll take us back over to the slides. And there'll be a chance to ask some questions at the end if any questions come up around legal request or any of the other content you see. So I'm going to pass it over to Doug for a minute to give a demo of the invoice overview work that has taken place in the last couple of releases.
All right, thanks, Jared. So I just wanted to quickly highlight some of the changes that we made to the invoice page and how you review invoices. So almost everybody should have this new page now. We've been kind of rolling it out slowly so to help with our support desk and everything to make sure that they weren't overwhelmed if people had questions about how to use the new page. So there's a couple customers that haven't received it yet, but everybody else should have it. So I don't want to spend a whole lot of time because you can just go in and see them for yourself. But I just want to make sure that we kind of covered a few things that you may not have noticed as you were using this or some other information. So we were really trying to go for updating the look and feel, trying to bring more information that's relevant to you at the parts of the page where they'd be more beneficial. So trying to move some of the information up towards the top of the page. So some of the things that we did was like we added in the ability to see the impact on the budget. So if you're using budgets, you'll be able to actually see how much you spent towards the budget, and if you approve this invoice, how much that will impact the budget for this matter. If you're not using budgets, you'll still see the life of matter spend being displayed there, and you'll see what the impact is to the life of matter spend if you approve this budget. One of the other big things that we did is we added this floating approval bar. So, and that's always at the bottom of the page, so no matter where you scroll, it always appears. And it pulls out the most commonly used actions that you'll be able to take. So if you have approval permissions, you'll be able to get the approve button, the reject button. We also pulled out if you have the ability to reassign the invoice to other people or other roles. We pulled that out to its own drop down, as a few people have a long list of that, and it made your workflow actions kind of difficult to navigate through. And then that leaves the less than common actions still in that workflow actions drop down. So this gives you a little bit more one-click access and to be able to access that information. Now we also kind of updated the bottom part of the page to give you more, again, one-click access where for any individual adjustment that's been made, you can either edit, delete, or convert it from a flag to an adjustment or an adjustment to a flag. You also have a one-click action to actually adjust that single charge. If you want to be able to adjust multiple charges, you can still do it the same way you do today. You click the check boxes next to each charge, and then you hit the adjust button up at the top. We did separate out a little bit so that in the old way, there used to be one button that you used to edit and make new adjustments. It was all the same button. We've kind of split those out to make it a little bit more clear as to what you're actually trying to accomplish. I already highlighted that reassign getting their own widget. And again, all the information here, we did reorder some information so that you can kind of just build your way down from what was originally charged to the adjustments that were made. these little info bubbles next to the items actually highlight how you made the adjustment. So if you reduce the units, it'll be next to the units column so that you can see that you actually did something on this charge to reduce it by 10 units versus if you took off a certain amount. For whatever reason, I decided to just take off $19.40. That's the info bubble is next to that, so you can see that's how you made that adjustment. One thing just to keep in mind, anytime you see a green number or a green box, that is letting you know that is the net. Any number that is not in green is going to be your original amount. So that way, if you collapse or do anything and you're always scrolling through and you're seeing a green button number, you should always just be aware that's going to be your net amount and not like the original build amount. So we also made some changes to the actual adjustment page itself. So for those of you who've been doing this for a while, this should have been a pretty big change. There's a lot more information on the page originally, but we believe that we've kind of streamlined it down to give you the same amount of information in a much more compact method and kind of gotten rid of some of the clutter. So one of the things that we did is we took away the preview option, but it's still there in essence by these 8 boxes down at the bottom. This pay after adjustment is essentially your preview. So no matter how you make an adjustment, that pay after adjustment is going to be updated as you enter in values, and that's going to tell you what you're ultimately going to end up with. And the good thing is, like, all these 8 boxes down at the bottom interact with each other. So if I decide that I just want to pay $1,000 on this charge instead of the $1,200 it currently is, if I put in $1,000 in that pay after adjustment, all the other boxes in there are going to update to reflect what that means by either reducing it by a certain amount, the number of units is going to be reduced, and then what that pay after is going to be for each one of those options. One of the other things that we did is when you're selecting rules, there's some little, we'll call it issues with how if you had a large rule set, the drop down had some quirks to it that didn't always give you the best experience when you're selecting those rules. We've kind of clarified that up, cleaned it up a little bit so that it's easier to scroll through and the type ahead actually still works so that you can start to type in the rule and choose rules in a better way of doing it. Another thing I just want to kind of point out is on that page, there's a little link down at the bottom called Show Me How. In the application, if you click on that, that will actually pop up a little video that will kind of give you a walkthrough of how to utilize this new screen. All right, back to Jared for search.
All right, so as you guys have all probably seen over the course of the year with each passing release, we've made a lot of changes to the search pages. We've rolled them out slowly, but with the 17.4 release, all of the top level searches will now be updated to have the new framework from both the back end as well as the new UI. So differences you'll see from the previous search experience is that the search criteria and the search results are all on the same page. And then as soon as you arrive on the search page, we have a default search that loads. And depending on what you last searched or what you're looking at, whether it's matters or invoices, that search would be different. But nevertheless, you'll see a set of search results as soon as you enter the page. The search results are loading faster than they ever were. We let you configure the filters and the columns that get displayed, and you can print and export the search results. We're providing bulk actions from the search page as well, and you can save searches and pull them up later on. It will save all of the filters, and then from this bar up at the top, you can pull back any previously saved search that you might have. With the 17.4 release, we're also putting out the client email manager. And as I mentioned before, this is a way to give you access to customize some of the emails that CounselLink is sending out. Similar to how we rolled out the search experience, more and more emails will be updated as we go through more and more releases. So they're not all done right now. I think there's about 8 or 9 of them right now that are done, mostly around law firm matter assignment. So here's the list right here. So we got the law firm matter assignment emails, the law firm removed from matter emails, law firm withdrawal, reminder to assign, cancel withdrawal, and then we've also got 3 of the invoice emails converted as well, and you can see here. So essentially, this gives you a little bit of the view down here of, sorry about that, gives you a little bit of the view right there as to what you can bring in there. You can decide which of those values you want to show. You can customize the messaging. You can customize the subject. You'll be able to add a CC field as well, so that someone can be CC'd when these emails go out. And we're going to be doing some tracking that in the history, the email history, that, you know, to say what emails went out and on what day, and you can get a preview of what that email that went out will look like. So again, this is some of the stuff that will be available after this weekend's release. As I mentioned before as well, we've introduced a new law firm assignment experience. So we previously had it so that you found your law firms by searching for a fee structure and then finding a firm that had a fee offer against that fee structure, but now we've expanded that so you can search for a firm by name as well, and we've updated the look and feel of the modal that you get when you're looking for the firms to assign. External invoice review, this is a way for you to set up some external invoice reviewers. You can pass this to somebody that's not in your organization. You can configure what they're allowed to do, whether they can make adjustments, flags, update allocations, add notes, this is what they can see, and then you can configure what they can do, whether they can adjust or flag or just approve. And then it involves changing your workflow a bit. So as you can see here, that means that you'll have to reach out to your account manager to get more information on what the process will be for that, so that we can update the workflow to add external invoice review steps along the way. We've added the ability to handle multiple billing guidelines. Like I said, we've updated the page where you would manage those guidelines. We give you an ability to upload existing files or create new ones directly within the application. You can have drafts going. You can choose which billing guidelines are published. You can set whether it's optional or required for the law firm to accept these guidelines before they can submit invoices to you. And we're going to be doing some more work on this in future releases, and Doug can kind of cover that as we talk about 2018. And so with that, I'll pass it over to Doug to talk about 2018.
All right, thanks, Jared. So just to talk a little bit about what's coming up. Before we talk about specifics, I just wanted to share with you what is our kind of overarching theme of what we're looking at over the next few years. All right. A couple of the topics that you're really going to start to see come out is going to be around workflows and analytics and supporting data-driven actions. So we're going to start embedding the analytics and not make you have to go to a reporting section in order to see that information. We're going to start to embed that throughout the application, so it'll be more relevant to you where you're at in the application, and hopefully a little bit easier to access some of the basic reports. If you want some crazy, very detailed reports, you'll still need to go to reporting and create those and manage them there. But if you just want the basics and some high-level information, we're going to embed that throughout the application. We're also going to be really focusing on workflow, both primarily for matter management, but also for things such as fee offers and some of the other areas that do not have workflows in them today. We're going to be updating and giving more workflow capabilities throughout the application. And ultimately, we're also looking to get, just an easier to use application, both on the client and the law firm side, trying to give you more relevant information when you want it and when you need it in a way that's easy to digest. And finally, we're looking to go international, so being able to support law firms and clients around the world, and that's a really big effort that involves a lot of things. But right now, we just want to kind of share this, like, we are making that effort. We've opened or started the efforts to do data centers over in Europe, so that if you have law firms or headquarters there that they need requirements to store the data in European locations that will be able to support that. All right, so how does that kind of translate into what we're actually doing? So our next release is 18.1, and for those of you who don't know how we do our releases we've changed in the last couple of years to kind of change it to be the first part of the release is a year, and then we do 4 releases every year. So we'll have a release 18.1, 18.2, 18.3, and 18.4, and those happen in the middle week of the middle month of each quarter is when we target those releases. So we're just wrapping up 17.4, which is coming out next week, and then our next release will be 18.1, meaning it's the first release in 2018. During that time frame, the stuff down this left is kind of some of the areas that we're focusing on. So we're going to start the efforts down on this vendor management process. And what that means is we're really going to try to give you a better view of who's working on your matters from an outside counsel or non-legal vendor view. So kind of like what they're doing, how much you're paying them, how well they're doing, things along those lines. And I'm going to give you some kind of previews of some of these things here in a minute from some screenshots for that. We're also going to update the combined invoice review experience. So we just rolled out the single invoice review. You can put multiple invoices together and do that. That's been in the old view. That's going to start to be converted over, so we should have that either in 18.1 or 18.2 ready to go for you as well. Again, we just talked about billing guidelines and how you can do multiple billing guidelines. We're going to extend that capability so that you can now have different guidelines for different divisions. So if you've broken up your organization across different divisions to accommodate different types of work, in the application today, that same billing guidelines need to be applied to each division. We're now going to allow you to come up with different guidelines across each division. There's going to be some more incremental improvements to the approval process for invoices. One of the things that we'll kind of highlight is that as you're making reviews, we found that a lot of people use the same rules over and over again. So we're going to give you those most commonly used rules as kind of like a subsection of your rule list so that you can quickly choose those without having to scroll through a big long list of words. And we're also in the middle of doing a lot of different performance improvements. So these involve database migrations, reporting stability, converting lookups to the new search engine so that they'll go quicker. All of these things, most of them you won't notice from a front-end standpoint as you're working. It's a lot of back-end work, but you should start to kind of notice things going a little bit quicker, maybe not hanging as much and having as many errors as possible. Once we get past this first release, things get a little bit more vague as we move forward for the rest of the year. But here's some of the topics that we're really focusing on. We're going to be adding in, like I said previously, really focusing on adding tasks and workflow to matters. We're going to be updating the Outlook add-in for those of you who use it. We're going to add some more functionality around journal entries and some basic capabilities within the plugin that you don't have today, being able to find any matter instead of just my matter, those types of things. And we're also going to extend that support across to Office 365 and Mac. We're even looking at being able to embed it into Word so that if you're in the Word doc itself, you can just hit a button that's going to upload it into CounselLink. We're also looking at some how we're going to improve some of the analysis around both law firm spend and the fee offers and timekeeper rates. A lot of that is going to be coming on with that 360-degree view of your vendor, and we'll talk about that in a second. We're looking at adding folders to documents. So again, a few of you have been asking for this for a while now. We're going to give you some basic ability to create some folders in there so you can organize your documents within the matter. We're also looking at improving how we handle budgeting, so being able to extend budget types across practice areas, offices, and divisions, so you can get kind of a bigger roll-up view of budgets that kind of subsume a bunch of matters or matter types across different areas. And we're also looking at the accruals process, so improving how we handle accruals in general and how we are providing some basic ability to do some reconciliation inside the app. And that's just the tip. We've got a whole lot of other things that we're kind of considering and working towards to see about rolling out for the rest of this year. So I just wanted to give you a a few screenshots to kind of show what some of the changes are that are coming up. So this is related to that 360-degree view of the vendor. And again, the idea is to tell you for any given law firm or other vendor that you're working with, to kind of give you an idea of what they're working on, what we're spending on them, how well are they doing, some sort of scorecard analysis there, information about that vendor itself, so what kind of diversity scorecards or diversity analysis that they have in there, and again, all the way down to the individual timekeepers to be able to see what you're paying each timekeeper, when is the last time that you gave them a increase in the rates, etc. So again, just kind of putting as much possible about that vendor into one place and updating the information so that you have a good snapshot of who you're working with and how well they're doing for you. The combined invoice is the next thing we're going to talk about. And again, this should look very similar to the new invoice overview page that we just released. It's just modifying the combined invoice page to take advantage of that new charges section, and then just kind of cleaning up the top part of that page that shows you a summary of how many invoices that you pulled in and what are the kind of overall details around those invoices. Everything else that is being applied to the individual invoice will be applied to that combined invoice as well. Again, the multiple billing guidelines, talking about, so when you upload it now, you're going to be able to, as the screenshot down in the bottom right shows you, it can tell you what division you want to assign it to, and you can set up the rules about what needs to happen for each division separately. Oops. And the last one that we kind of wanted to just give you a highlight of what's coming up in the 18.1 release is on the invoice section, when you're making adjustments, this little, when you select your rule drop down, it'll show you your most commonly used rules, and then it'll give you the list of all the rules. These rules are independent of by user, so each user will have a different list of their top 5 that are used. It is all based on the back end on how much you've used them, and if you then use the type ahead, which is when you start to type in, the rules list will just start to shrink down based on the characters you enter. That'll work across all both the most commonly used rules and the rules overall. All right, so that's the preview of what's kind of coming up next year. We think there's a lot of good things that we have in the pipeline that we're very excited to be working on, and we think will give you a lot of value. So if there are any questions, now is the time.
Okay, Jared and Doug, I want to field the first question to you from Barbara. She asks, if a note to the law firm is added along with an adjustment, it appears it cannot be edited or deleted. Is that correct? And can that be addressed in the future? Barbara also concludes, she said, I have had to delete and or edit a note, and I am unable to do so.
All right, so you are able to edit and delete notes now. I believe that's going to be coming out as part of the 17.4 release. So the notes, both at a charge level and a invoice level, will be editable and deletable. I believe you can only delete them if you create them or if you have the admin role, but that capability is going to be rolled out as part of 17.4 next week.
Okay, we have another question from Mia, and she is questioning the diversity scorecard. Does that mean reporting diversity will be mandatory?
That'll be something that you guys can configure yourselves. That'll be a capability. You can either make it mandatory or not. We aren't going to force you to collect that information, but if that is information you feel that you need to collect, we will give you the opportunity to make it mandatory.
Okay, very good. Lydia has a question. She's asking, is there anything similar to the legal request analytics for invoicing? Just similar basics like how fast certain approvers actually approve, how many invoices per vendor in a given time frame, etc. Or will this be part of the 360 view?
So the short answer is Yes, it will be somewhat part of the 360 view. You'll be able to see that as it relates to specific vendors. We're also looking at rolling in some of that same thing from legal request into other parts of the application, which include the invoice. That is probably a little bit longer out on the timeline right now because we have things like the legal spend dashboard within reporting today that has a lot of that same information. But it is on our radar that we are wanting to roll that out across pretty much every part of the application.
Okay, thanks, Jared. Mia has a follow-up here. Will the rules list be an exportable table so users can see the definition of each rule?
I don't believe we have any plans for that at this time, but I will put that down as something to consider.
Okay, fair enough. Maria has a question. Will this presentation be available so I can share it with the entire legal department?
Yes, so there should be a link that should go out with the recording of this, but we can also make sure that a copy of the deck gets included with that.
Of course, very good. Following up here, Heather has a question. Can you identify any new features that there will be a charge for, like legal request?
At the moment, we don't have any concrete plans around that, but or no definitive will charge or will not charge. But legal request is the only one right now that that we know requires additional charges, and it's just for the implementation.
Okay, moving forward, Jill has a question on the new legal request feature. Can you get a weekly report listing them by attorney or title, etc.?
At the moment, this is specific to the reviewers and how they're completing their tasks, but you can view the number of requests that you're processing from external vendors compared to internal users. But at the moment, we do not have the ability to differentiate between specific users at the requester vendor level. But that's something I'll definitely take that down for future consideration. That's a good idea. The reporting and analytics that we're bringing in this release are kind of the first pass to kind of gauge what people what types of things people are interested in measuring, and to provide some amount of insight. So it's certainly something we're open to responding to and addressing. So thanks for that.
Okay. Maria has another follow-up question here. Will there be a way to bulk update fee structures and rule sets if the wrong ones were assigned?
That is a good question, because I believe we have some plans to look at some bulk reassign, but I'm not sure if those two were considered in the list yet. So we can put that down. And I'll take this as an opportunity to plug the idea board for things like this, particularly. Up in the upper right-hand corner of CounselLink, there's a little light bulb on there. And if you click on that light bulb, it will open up the idea board where you can review what other people have submitted as requests for enhancements and vote on them. And you can also submit your own request, and we review that list on a weekly basis. And as things particularly get more and more votes, we are more likely to consider putting that into the product. But we also, for things often like this, where if we're thinking about doing something similar to another part of the application and somebody suggests that we do it there, we will pull in items from the idea board without a lot of votes that kind of fit in with some of the other stuff that we're working on. So this is a great place to submit your enhancement requests. But like I said, for that one in particular, I don't know that we have any specific plans for that yet. But I'll make a note of that there. And if you guys want to go ahead and add that to the idea board, that would also be a good thing, because one of the nice things about the idea board is it lets us know who submitted it. So if we have any follow-up questions about why you want to do something, or maybe we just need a little bit more details about it, we have a contact information that we can then get with you to further understand the need.
Okay, great. Jared, Heather wants to know, is bulk change allocations on the list?
Bulk change allocations. At this time, I think it might be too early to say whether it's on the list. It's certainly something that, it's something that we're looking at, but we don't know, we don't have any definitive timeline as to when that would, if or when that would be available.
Okay. Donna asks, how do we change the defaults on the various searches?
So, so for the search defaults, so whatever default search you arrive on, I believe that it's controlled through the last search that you had performed. So if you were to perform a search, navigate away from the page, and then come back to that search, it will save the last search that you did as part of your cookie. So if you ever clear your cookies, you would lose that, but you can also just perform some other search before you leave the page if that's what you want your default to be. And that includes the saved searches as well. You can have it come up with a saved search.
And if you want something other than what the current default is, you can create a search, save it as a saved search, and that'll appear on your home page. And if you just use that as your way to get into the search every time, it'll execute the same. We are looking at something down the line to be able to do and actually set a default view that kind of customize that view, but that's probably at the end of the year or maybe even 2019 before we get to that.
Okay, Jared, Donna offers something that you may have already covered, but let's embellish on that. But when you tap go to default, it defaults to something. I would like to change my default.
Oh, I see. In the reset to default, and you want to change it. I see. So yeah, okay. So those default searches, so when you go back to the default from that button, that right now is not something that you can customize, but we can take that as a request. See if we can address that.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like we're nearing a close here, and first of all, I want to thank the attendees for all their great questions, and I certainly want to thank Jared and Doug for their fine presentation, and again to all of our attendees for taking your time out today to join us. I just have a few quick follow-up reminders. All attendees will receive an email within 1 week with a link to a recording of today's webinar and slides. In closing, folks, there's a brief survey at the end of our webinar today that we ask you to please take a moment to complete. Your feedback will certainly help us in planning our future webinars. Again, I want to thank you all so much for your time today, and I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, everyone.